Hello everybody, how's it going? And welcome to the As Always relaunch for 2020. I'm one of your hosts, James, and I'm joined, as always, by Tyler.
As always, how's it going, my friend?
Pretty good, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Doing very good. Excited for 2020. Excited for the As Always relaunch and to talk about, everything we got in store. So pretty much, usually we do this on like the first podcast of the year, but I'd rather just have the podcast be what they are, actually just get straight into the shows rather than spend an episode talking about, this is what we got planned and everything. Whereas we could do that in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just you and I talking like this. And so we're going to go through some new stuff and changes in each of the podcasts and shows individually and just sort of talk about our plans and goals and that sort of thing, James. So
cool.
Pretty
Great
simple,
stuff.
Pretty easy. First thing I thought we could talk about is merch.
Yeah.
Is the new merch store.
Merch store.
Yep. You might have seen, if you've watched my last video, that underneath of the video, you've got merchandise that's advertised. As always, merch. So we have a Teespring store. We've decided to go ahead with Teespring. I just think it's a nicer service, and a little bit cheaper as well. Not a lot cheaper than Spreadshirts, but it also lets you kind of connect to your YouTube channel, which is a big thing as well. So we've got an As Always specific merch store. So over there we've got all of the 2020 designs for As Always Entertainment, the Cinema Room, Clubhouse, As Always podcast, as well as the cool that I really, really liked that James designed, the As Always 4 Pillars trailer logo, which is just a parody of the Marvel Studios logo. So that's on there as well. And we want to be adding, regularly adding to that with new merch. Some of it will be limited time only, that the designs will be up there. Whereas what you see there now is certainly stapled designs that are going to stay there at the very least for the entire year. Whereas other designs we may bring in and out or keep there depending on what it is, of course. But that's something new as well.
Cool.
That's
looking
exciting.
good. I got it up now.
You've got it up there?
Looking good.
Yeah. It's an exciting thing. What's your favorite design?
Oh, what's my favorite design? I mean, I really like the Clubhouse one. I think it looks cool on the mug.
I know, it's good, isn't it? Can we talk about that? All the different designs for all the shows and stuff. Like, this is one of my favorite things that you do. You're such a good graphic designer with all this sort of stuff. So I was buzzing to see what you did. I had like some ideas of what I wanted to see from it, and then I told you, and you're like, I'll see what I can do, which is pretty much what we do every year. I'll be like, I think this, and you're like, I'll see what I can do, and then you blow me out of the water with what you actually do, especially with that Clubhouse design.
Yeah,
especially with that Clubhouse design. I had an idea in my head, and yours was way better, and what it came out as was really, really cool. I know I've got my Clubhouse shirt on the way.
Nice.
So that's exciting. The Cinema Room logo I like. That was the most similar, I guess, as well to last year. Just kind of font change. Just to give them their own identity.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That was the biggest thing with that. And then you just did up a nice little, as always, artwork one with our little avatars and stuff like that.
Yep.
As well. How are you feeling about... Because you and I haven't talked about this, obviously, on a video of any kind. But do you want to talk about the reaction and your reaction to the 2020 artwork design that we've got for As Always?
Yeah, well, I expected it to be way more positive because I think the past years, I think they're always a bit of a change, and I think to people it can be a bit of a shock. They're like, oh no, I really got used to the other one, and this one's way different. But with this one, I think it was such a upgrade in a different way. Whereas the other ones are like reinventions of what we've done. Whereas this one is so new and different. I think it was really great because I absolutely loved it. So seeing everyone's positive reaction to this has been really great. Just seeing everyone getting behind it, being like, wow, this is definitely the best piece of art. It's super motivating as well. So it's great. It's great to see everybody loving it.
Yeah, definitely. I was blown away just from what I saw when he was sketching the first design, and it was my character. And I was like, holy shit. And I think there's a couple of things that add to that. Obviously, Harlan gets better and better each year, in my opinion. For the most part, I think some years maybe on the same level. I feel like 2018, 2019, I don't know. There was... I wouldn't even call it a step up. It was just like a step to the side, if that makes sense. It was like something different with the same sort of level. I didn't feel like it was a big leap. It was just something different. Whereas this was like a significantly big leap to the point where like, there's no way anyone could be upset with this one. Like this one's by far and away the best design. I know Harlan finds it easier when he has something to scale it off. So I just sent him some character models of Captain America and Iron Man, and then like, here you go, draw us off a stance like that, and I gave him I had the clothing we wanted. I told him, I'm like, I want this, I want a purple jacket, and I want to have this thing on my chest, like and I had a couple ideas, and then I told him what you wanted, but I said, because you wanted the same clothes last year, you told me you want the same exact style as last year.
Yeah.
And so I told him that, but I'm like, yeah, but I want, with his jacket, it's going to be black, but maybe try to make it a bit like more futuristic, put some green trim on it somehow, I don't know what you want to do. And he's like, all right. And then he just ran away with it and came up with that new jacket, which I love that.
Yeah, he's nailed it. It's fucking great.
Love that jacket. And even just, I was like, I wanted like an As Always patch on my arm. So he did like a red patch on my arm that's supposed to be like a little As Always thing. But yeah, I love the new designs, and it was really great seeing the reaction to it, and great seeing how you designed your avatar, how you managed to like use Photoshop and bring your arm down as well. That was really cool. Yeah. That was really cool. So yeah, we got the new merch, so I'm sure the link's in the description. Yeah. Yeah. So that's cool. So check that out. Go get your new merch, your 2020 merch. Get your Clubhouse t-shirt if you're a patron. Speaking of which, we could talk about patreon.com/as always. Not a lot of changes in 2020. Back in, November, October, I went and put out a feeler just to kind of see where people were sitting with Patreon, anything we could improve on with the tier system or content or anything like that. And we got a lot back about, streaming. Everyone was very happy with how the tiers were and didn't really want any changes there. So the only change we did, and we'll talk about that later actually, we'll talk about the reason why later. Okay. The only tier we did was take off the Clubhouse guest tier. Now, there's people in line right now to be a guest on Clubhouse from last year when that was a tier reward, and that still stands. So once we're finished... They don't get it. No, once that's done and we've caught up on everyone, then there won't be guests from that point on. And we'll get into the reason why later, but... so that's the only tier change, and then the addition on certain things with the tiers. So what we're going to do when it comes to the producer list is James is going to put together, if he hasn't already, I don't know, I think it might be the only thing left to do, James. With
regards to this, right, I was going to talk about it because I made one, right, because it's at the end of my Batman video. But I wasn't sure if it might be easier if we individually just do one, because I tried to export it and it doesn't, like, it's still got, like, I can't get it to go out without the background. It keeps, it will just go black, and it's not, like, I can't, because I've made it just sort of in Sony Vegas normally, just as like a white thing that comes out and then the names scroll up and then it closes again. But, like, I can't get it the same way I do everything else. I don't know whether you would want to like just make your own that'd just have the names pop up or something, or I don't know, because I can't seem to get the one that I've made to export properly.
Right.
So I don't know. But
I'll have a look at yours. And see what I can do.
It's really simple.
Yeah,
it's
pretty
like
much.
Most basic.
That's how. Yeah. Instead of rather calling out names every time, have the list come out at the start and end of every video, because sometimes you forget when you're recording. You're just focusing on recording the actual content itself. You're not thinking about, I got to thank Patreon producers. It gets hard. So to make sure that we don't miss it, have that in there each time. And then with the poll system, so the $10 tier is for polls. So the way the poll's going to work is it's not going to be on videos. It's going to be on two things. One is going to be cinema rooms. Now it's not going to be you get to vote on what you get to pick what we're doing necessarily. It's like, here's some options. We're going to give you the options of what we're thinking of doing next. We may still do all of those options, but what do you want to see next? Patreon gets to vote on what the next episode we do is. And the other poll thing is a new thing to Patreon, which there will be monthly streams exclusive to Patreon. Now, the thing in the past that kind of got in the way of that was it's so hard with our schedules being in the other side of the world and time zones and stuff. it does get hard to organize things, especially when we're doing podcasts every single week. To find another time of the week that works for both of us, it's hard. So instead of doing those streams together, we can do solo individual streams. But one stream a month, it might just be you, it might just be me. We don't know yet, but there will be monthly streams on Patreon only. So that's something new that'll happen. And we could do 2 monthly streams. We could do as many streams as we want, because James might do one, but I might go, but I want to do one, playing whatever, yada, yada, yada. On the side of, the streams we do on our channels. But yeah, that's the thing that's new. And we've spruced up the page a bit. I did the tag tabs, so it's really easy to find content now on Patreon. So you find the main tags, whether it be Clubhouse, Cinema Room, the exclusive content. You just hit the tags on the side tab, and it'll just show you those, the Clubhouse episodes, just show you the Cinema Room episodes, just show you the content that's exclusive you can't find anywhere else. As well as, I'm sure, for James, but I know certainly me, there will be videos I put out this year. It's not going to be every video, but plenty of videos that'll be 24 hours early access to Patreon.
I was thinking of doing the same thing with big projects. I didn't do it with the Batman one, but I said in that video at the end, I'm thinking of doing more stuff on Patreon with my main content. So big projects will be exclusive. No, not exclusive, but early access. Sorry, on Patreon.
Yeah,
so
exclusive.
24 hours.
Yeah.
Exclusive. I'll work fucking so hard on these videos, and then I'll put it out just to Patreon.
Spend 100 hours on a single video.
That'd be really worth my time. Spend 14 hours working on a 50-second intro, and then I'll put it on Patreon only. Yeah, that sounds like a really clever idea.
That's a genius idea. That's you know what? Now you're thinking.
Exactly.
Now you're thinking.
I'm just gonna quit my channel, to be honest.
You should teach business at universities. So when it comes to the podcast, though, let's go through the podcast individually. Let's start with Clubhouse.
Okay.
Let's start with Clubhouse, because there's not much changing there. We've got a nice, beautiful, fresh logo look to Clubhouse.
We do indeed. You like what I did there? It's a club, like a...
I like what you did there.
Clubhouse.
I like what you did
but
there.
also as well, it's double. There's layers there, right? So it's a club because Clubhouse, but also in a clubhouse, people play cards.
They do
sometimes on occasion.
They do play
cards.
There you
go.
Yeah.
That's where that came from.
At least in our clubhouse, we play cards.
Yeah, I should hope so.
We play Uno, not anything else.
Just Uno. We have Uno nights, Tuesday nights. Yeah.
100%.
Good.
So we're not doing guests because why is that? No. No, so the main thing was, and we talked about this before, James and I were discussing what we're going to do with the As Always podcast, right? So they all interconnect enough that there's reasons for, we want to do things in other shows, and that affects then the other shows. So again, like I said, it's hard to more than once a week find time when we're both got lives and jobs and things to do, to find times to connect and work on stuff. Especially, it takes a lot of hours to do what we do. So we're like, okay, how do we make this as easy as possible? So we try to record 2 podcasts 1 week together, whether it's Cinema Room. So last year we usually did Kill Connor Club and Cinema Room back to back, and put Cinema Room out on Patreon, and we'd put Kill Connor Club out on YouTube. And then the next week, we do Clubhouse, just Clubhouse, and the Cinema Room would already be recorded from before and come out. Now that's going to change, and the reason for that is the As Always podcast, we want to have more of a focus on guests. We want to stretch out and try to get more guests on. And when we have guests on, that's really difficult, because all of a sudden we're not... James and I know Sunday nights we're going to record a podcast. Or Sunday days, we know on a Sunday when we're going to record a podcast. We've done it for 5 years. But it's hard when you throw another guest in from another time zone that's like, I can only do it this time and this time. And then we're rearranging our whole weeks to work for a guest. Do we want to do that every single week? Fuck no.
I do.
I'd rather...
I don't know about you, but I love it. I love making things harder for myself. So it'd be really great. It'd be really great to do that, actually.
Amazing. We'll get some guests for Cinema Room as well, make it even harder. But when you think about it this way, when you're doing it, because as soon as you throw a guest in, and if you were going to do it every week on Clubhouse and As Always podcast, then you're not just doing 2 different weird recording times. You're also then like, okay, so we're going to do Cineroom now. I guess we'll do that Sunday. So now we're doing in a fortnight 3 different recordings plus everything else we do. It's so fucking difficult, and we had to do a lot of that last year. And the first 6 months of last year were tough for me. I don't know how you felt, James, with doing 3 podcasts. It was difficult trying to balance all that and try to get it working. We were just doing so much. I felt like after the meetup, we just had a lot more energy and it was just easy for the rest of the year for whatever reason, or we just got in the groove. But I mean, it felt the same when we started Clubhouse, and then you get in the groove and it's not a big deal. You just get used to it. But
yeah, I think it was one of those things because we just started Cinema Room as well. So it was
exactly.
adding another thing into the mix.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, these 3 podcasts have built their own identity over the past 12 months. They're their own shows. Sure, it's just James and I, and you think it's 2 the same guys talking about shit, so what's different? Well, every show's built their own identity, which I love that over time, and Cinema Room's developed its own identity over its first year, its first season, if you will, being out there. So now the way we're going to do it is do Clubhouse and Cinema Room back to back. So Cinema Room's pre-ready for the next week to come out on Patreon, and Clubhouse comes out right that day. And then we have, so we know on a Sunday we're going to record Cinema Room and Clubhouse. We know that, and that won't change because there's never guests. So it's just James and I. We know we can just do that at a set time. That way we're not fucking up our schedule, and that's 2 shows. Easy. Then we only have to fuck around with As Always podcast with guests. And sometimes the guests work out for our time and we can do it Sundays. But that is actually rare. It's like 4 Pillars are about it. Eddie and Sheps, it's about it. Whereas everyone else, we have to, you know, I'll wake up at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday and we've got to do a podcast. Like, it gets like that, and it gets hard. And I'd rather focus it on one show and try to get some of the best guests we've ever had, because we lacked off on guests because it was too difficult and it was just easier for us not to, or just have the guests that were easy to have on. Whereas you and I have talked about, and we have a lot of goals, and we think rebranding from Kill Connor Club to the As Always podcast, you know, just name alone opens up a few windows for us and takes us away from, you know, that Assassin's Creed past and the hatred we used to have past.
Yeah, and not even that, but also just Kill Connor Club is a super aggressive name.
And
I think it's As Always podcast is a lot easier on the ears. If someone says, "Do you want to be on the As Always podcast?" You're like, "Oh, I'll give them, you know, a chance."
Yeah.
If you hear, "Do you want to be on the Kill Connor Club?" You're like, "No, I don't. Thank you very much."
Yeah.
Unless you're Victoria Atkin, and then you do for some reason. But you know.
Yeah,
that's
right.
All right.
Exactly. And I totally agree with that. And there's people we want to get on, so we're gonna continue that and get more people on, more YouTubers, more people in the industry, and try to even get more voice actors on. You never know. Roger Clark, if you're listening, fucking come on over. So, you know, with the As Always podcast, we want to have a focus on guests. So because that Clubhouse, we want to take away the guests, just because it just makes it easier that we can do these 3 shows without wearing ourselves out, and we want to keep doing these 3 shows, and we keep bringing the energy to them. So for the best quality over all 3 shows, this is just the way it's got to be. No guests on Cinema Room, unless it's a rarity. You know, I mean, never say never. I mean, look what happened with the Rise of Skywalker one. But if you would ever see a guest on Cinema Room, it's going to be like 4 Pillars or Eddie and Sheps for whatever reason, just because they will show up when on our time, not we have to work around someone else's time, sort of thing. But yeah, so Clubhouse, that's the only real change. It's the best podcast on the internet, so it's going to continue to be the best podcast on the internet. And the more people that join Patreon, the more fucking stories you're going to get, the more advice you're going to get, the more topics you're going to get, and the funnier and better it gets.
Exactly. So join the
we had
fun
a great
now.
year.
What are you doing? Pledge patreon.com/as always. Get access to the best podcast, and not just that, but join in with the best podcast and make it even better. That's you know.
Because everyone, this is what people don't understand about Clubhouse. All the patrons are goddamn characters. If you're a regular poster on the Clubhouse podcast, you are a character of the show. Exactly, we know stuff about you. We know stories. We're able to follow up on stories with you. That's what it's the people's podcast. It is the best podcast on the internet. And even if we're not having guests, you're still all characters on, and everyone knows that. So, and I feel like we did what we set out to do with having patron guests. we've been doing Clubhouse for 3 full years. We're now in the 4th year of Clubhouse.
What is going on? What?
Yeah, I know. We are entering the 4th.
Oh my
yeah, we're entering the 4th year, 4th season of Clubhouse. So it's had that identity where it was like the first episode was just a Kill Connor Club. And then it developed into, okay, it's a Patreon show where we actually get to talk to people in the community. And now it's an entertainment lifestyle show, comedy show. And everyone's a character that interacts with it, that puts out topics, that puts out advice and story threads. They're characters alongside us. And, we throw in my roommate Jared that comes in once in a while to add his stories to it. It's a beautiful show. It's my favorite podcast to do. We're not allowed to have favorite children, and these 3 podcasts are my 3 kids. But Clubhouse is the favorite one. You know what I mean? It's the one that's like doing martial arts when I told it to do martial arts. It's the one that gets good report cards. It's the one that hasn't been a disappointment. You know what I mean? Where the other 2, it's like, be better.
Oh, no. Well,
look at your sister and be more like her. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
This is your fault. You failed the Cinema Room and As Always podcast. That's why they're not your favourite. It's all your fault.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, of course, it's all on me as the main parent, as the dad. Why didn't you do the fucking dishes like I asked you? We're going to get in trouble for that one, I just realised. Because people don't like jokes, and he was serious about what he just said. We've
started off 2020 on a good note. We changed the name, we've revamped the podcast, we've already ruined it, but that's what we do, so it's okay. 100%.
So that's it for Clubhouse. Join the fun, patreon.com/as-always. Just $1 a month. Over 70 episodes. Holy shit. 75 episodes.
That's a few.
So I'm excited for the 4th year and 4th season of Clubhouse to begin very soon in a matter of weeks. But the other big thing, this is what we got to mention, because this goes over all 3 podcasts, is they're no longer going to be released on Sundays.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing, because another big thing from Patreon that I got feedback-wise was set times for Clubhouse. Kill Connor Club was the only thing that really had a set time, and Cinema Room when it came free, because it had already been done the week before. Whereas when it comes to Clubhouse and Cinema Room Clubhouse and Cinema Room on Patreon, the times were whack. It was just like whenever we finished recording at whatever time that was, we got to chuck it up. So to fix all that up, and for another reason that we'll announce in a second, every podcast will come out at a set time, an exact set time, on Mondays. So we're still going to have our days on Sundays to record, but on Mondays they're going to come out at 3:30 GMT. English time, 3:30 p.m.
Not AM, just in case.
English time, which is when James usually releases his videos. That's the set time, James, you release your videos, right?
Yep.
I want to look that up. So that's 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US, which would be 7:30 a.m. Mondays on the West Coast, and I think that's 1:30 in the morning on a Tuesday morning in Australia, Eastern Standard Time. So on your Monday mornings or Monday afternoons or Tuesday mornings, depending where you are in the world, you get yourself a dose of As Always. To start off your week, you get a podcast from As Always, and it'll be set times for every podcast on Patreon, live for free, not live, but for free to everyone else, when we do those shows. So that's the set time.
Yep.
Now, cool. Cinema Room. I mean, James, how do you feel the first year of Cinema Room went? How do you feel about the Cinema Room podcast, the youngest child?
Great. I feel good about it. It's obviously the newest, so there's not as much history there. But it's good. I think it's developed into something better than it was when we began. I think that's what all the podcasts do. But began with, we were just sitting down talking about Iron Man. But I think as it's gone by, we've developed, memes and inside jokes that people on the podcast get. And I think we're at this point now where we can talk about these movies in depth, but also there's a bit of fun on the side there as well. Some laughs, some callbacks to memes and stuff. And I think it's this good mesh of what we do with Clubhouse and As Always podcast, but combined with this cinema, but also TV show and video game sort of breakdown in-depth sort of discussion about movies and whatnot. So I think it's developing something good, and I think it's going to continue to do that as we keep doing it. So I'm excited to keep going and do more with it. So good stuff.
Yeah, I feel good about it too. We got a lot of episodes in as well in its first year. We got 28 episodes of the podcast in 2019, the most of all 3 podcasts that year. So it was a really strong podcast that in terms of we got to develop it a lot. We got to spend a lot of time doing it in 2019. The biggest change, I guess, is going to be, we spent a lot of time going back to old movies. We watched The Godfather, we watched Hook. We kind of could just do whatever we want. A lot of MCU movies in the past, as well as talking about some new movies when Joker came out, Endgame, El Camino, things like that. But the biggest thing I feel like we're going to be focusing on in terms of what people like to watch and what gets the most views, that's what we're not doing it for the views. We're doing it for what do people want to see, and views tell us what people want to see. Because there's a big difference between when we're watching or talking, I should say, about something brand new compared to an old thing. So our focus is going to be on new content. So a new movie, a new TV show, or a new season of a TV show, or a new video game. And we've got a lot backlogged already at the moment. We're going to do a cinema room on The Witcher Season 1, on You Season 2, on The Mandalorian. But then you've got all these Oscar movies that are out, and how are we going to do that? So you and I came up, I gave you an idea.
You came up with
pitched
the
it to
idea,
you. I came up with the idea and pitched it to you of the first cinema room of 2020 is going to be a Best Picture special. So there are 9 nominees for the Oscar for Best Picture. I'm just like, okay, sure, we could do a cinema for 1917, but then when are we going to do one for The Irishman? Or when are we going to get around to doing Marriage Story? Or when, you know what I mean? Like, by the time we'd get to do them, they'd be old and there'd be something else new that's out. So we either pick one and miss 2, or we do them all in one go. So I expect it to be a long episode, definitely a long episode for you guys. But it's sad in some ways we may not to go, shot for shot about 1917, but we're going to be able to go in depth into all of these movies. There's 9 nominations. I've seen 8 of the 9 now at the time of recording this. I've only got Ford vs. Ferrari to see, and I will see it by the time we record that cinema room. James, you're probably not going to be able to see them all, but as long as one of us does, we can...
You can tell me about them. I can't wait.
Well, exactly. So let's go through quickly. I just want to go through the nominations real quick, so
let me get it.
People know and prepare to watch as many as they can. So the nominees for Best Picture are Ford vs. Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Of those 9, James, what have you seen and what are you going to have seen by the time?
Hang on, I'm getting the thing up. I'm trying to find it.
Yep.
Oh, I can't find it. Hang on, you retweeted
I'll send it to
you.
Yeah, no, I'll send it to you now.
Oh, where are you sending it?
Just on Facebook chat.
All right, hold up here. Let's get this. There it is. Okay,
there you go, mate.
Okay, so I've already seen The Irishman, Joker, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
15-3.
I'm definitely going to see 1917 and Marriage Stories on Netflix, so that's fucking easy. As for the others, I will try.
Try to see Jojo Rabbit.
I can't say I will, but I'll try.
Try to see Jojo Rabbit.
Right.
If there's only one more you can see, try to see Jojo Rabbit. So at least you've seen 6. That way you've seen 6.
All right.
So I've seen all of them bar Ford versus Ferrari. So over on Friday night, I watched Parasite, which is a Korean film. And then Saturday, I went to the cinema, saw Little Women and 1917 back to back. All of those 9 movies, the 8 I've seen, all of them are phenomenal movies. So we'll get to... We've already done a cinema room on Joker. We've already done a cinema room on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So probably won't spend as much time on those. Just maybe comparing them to how we feel. So we'll go through as much as we can, all 9 movies, talk about our thoughts, spoilers and everything, and then... it won't be as bad spoilers, I'd say. We're probably not going to spoil endings for these movies just because we're covering so many. I want to pitch for you to see them. And then we'll decide, James and I'll decide what's our, choice for Best Picture at the end of the episode. And then we'll get into, doing a cinema room on The Mandalorian, You Season 2, The Witcher. And by that point, that's in 2 months' time, there'll be new stuff out. There's already all these new movies coming out. So we've got the first couple of months planned out.
What are we doing about Kingdom Hearts 3 Rewind? Are we doing one on that?
Yeah, shit.
Because that'll be
Look at
story
that.
heavy.
Look at that, yeah.
So that's another one.
Well, why don't we decide once we finish and how much there is to break down. If there's that much, we need to do a cinema room on it.
Sure. I hope there is.
Otherwise, we can just talk about it on the As Always podcast, I feel.
Or we could do a separate video. We could just sit down and talk about it.
Let's just do a separate video, since it's not like a full game. Did you know that the only cinema room we've ever done on a game is Kingdom Hearts 3?
Really?
Yep.
It's because we've done so many last year, though.
We've done so many spoiler casts for other games, but that was what developed into cinema room, right?
Yeah.
We've done God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2.
Kingdom Hearts 3 was the only game that was worth breaking down, I think, last year. So
true, and when all the other games came out, I was away.
Yeah.
So
there might be some more this
I've
year.
now finished Modern Warfare, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, that's something that's done now, and you finished that months ago, and so you can't do that now. It's things fly by, and sometimes there's things we're just not going to get to cover because there's too much of a backlog. But that's where the polls come in, where Patreon will get to vote on what they really want to see, and that sort of stuff. Yeah. But so that's cinema room. Now the As Always podcast, big focus. This is probably what has the most change. Obviously, it's a complete name change from the Kill Connor Club to the As Always podcast. It's going to be guest heavy, I feel. I want it to be. And some of it will be guests that just join in the banter like we always do. And that's our preferred way to do it. But James and I talked about, since none of them are going to be live anymore, they're coming out Mondays and are all pre-recorded. Sometimes we might have a guest on they might only be able to give us 45 minutes to an hour, and it's more of an interview. And I do love it. I know James doesn't like as much. I do love interviewing people. I really enjoy it. But I like it when they also join in on our show. If it's 50-50 split, that's the perfect outcome to me. To be able to, if it's a first-time guest, we want to ask them some questions and then just get into what we're talking about, where As Always podcast is about current events and news. So I know you enjoy, we talked about this when we did a pre-record at Kill Connor Club 113, where we had one topic, and it's what we want to see from the next. And then we went through all these different games. I really enjoyed that podcast. I felt you did too. We both had a lot of energy for it. And by the end, we both it'd be cool if we did that for every episode, where it was here's the set topic for the episode, and that's what the episode's about.
Yeah, and that'll be what's in the title. But then on the thumbnail, you can also have pictures of what we talk about for the news-related stuff. And that way you get the best of both worlds, because you're getting at the beginning, if we have a guest, say, like you said, they can only give us a small amount of time. At the beginning, we're going to have a guest. We'll be able to interview them, talk to them, and also have throw in some bits of news as well and get their opinion on it as well, which will be interesting and cool, things to talk about within, video games, movies, TV, whatever's happening. And then at the tail end of that, we get this larger portion, which is then me and Tyler focusing on a single topic, which could be something that we come up with that we think is great, could be something that someone recommends. If we could go through the video ideas channel on Discord and go through things that wouldn't necessarily be something either of us would turn into a video, but might be a good talking point for a podcast idea. So that could be something that we do to get people more involved in that. But that, to me, is such a better structure, because then you've got a focus for that episode of the podcast, one that you can then use for the title, and you can have in the thumbnail, and works as a nice sort of focus for that podcast. But then also you get the other stuff that is, the news, but we can get through that way quicker rather than dragging it out and going really in depth on each topic. Because I feel it was good, the way that we structured it, and the way we went from talking about Assassin's Creed originally to talking more about more games, and then developing it more to just talking about sort of everything that happens in the news and current events. But the point we're at now, I feel like we need more of a focus to engage people and to, I don't know, I just feel like we need more of a purpose for it. So I think that works a lot more, rather than just sort of mindlessly talking about news all the time, because sometimes nothing even happens in the news, and we're sort of doing a podcast 3 things have happened, now let's just fucking, I don't know, jerk off for the next hour. So I'm looking forward to the new structure, to be honest. I think it's going to be a good change, and I think it's going to engage people a little bit more, so it should be fun.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I feel the same way. And if there's no guest, it would just be like we jump on, okay, we've got current events segment. Bang, bang, bang. Here we go through the news. And then it's like, okay, the main topic of the podcast is blah, 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 blah. I wrote about 10, scenario topics for a full episode out when I was in fucking an army hospital isolation for a week. When I would sit there and I just wrote all these ideas out because all I had was a pen and paper in this room. I didn't have the phone. I didn't have anything. And I was just writing down all these as always ideas. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of the ideas for what we're talking about today came from me sitting in that hospital bed.
That's good. I'm glad you were in that hospital bed.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, I'm glad too in the long term. It's that whole situation changed what I'm doing now. The whole trajectory of my life has changed because of what happened there, because of that not happening. Yeah. So, ultimately thankful for it. And, time will tell how it works out. But, that you're right. So we can have that moment where we focus on the guests. And because it's pre-recorded, we can make it, nicely edited where it's okay with current events. Let's move on to the next segment and you kind of edit it in. Or when you guess, you can transition it in. So it's going to work either way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as well with regards to having like the big focus of the podcast, whatever that topic might be or that subject, we could do some sort of get people involved in maybe make a post on Patreon or something. So
that's the other thing. That's the other thing is holding up a goddamn headphone adapter. For the $25 producer tier is they can put up ideas for as always podcast topics.
Okay.
We might not necessarily pick them, but just like they can pitch ideas and have that chance to put out what they think we could talk about. And if we look at them like, holy shit, that's a great idea, I haven't thought of that, we go and do that. Or if it's something we're not interested in, we don't do it. But the producers will get a chance to at least pitch us some ideas for sure for podcast topics. Now, the biggest announcement that I wanted to kind of leave to the end was, right now you're seeing James and I talking on cameras, which is pretty cool.
Hello.
It's nice. They don't often see us talking on podcasts on cameras if they're watching on YouTube, on a podcast, of course, but this is on a YouTube video. Now, the thing is, if we pre-record everything, always, why don't we do video?
Yeah, why not?
So for the As Always podcast only, not Cinema Room and not Clubhouse, but for the As Always podcast, it is going to be a video podcast now. So, of course, all the audio podcast comes out on everything normally, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, everywhere, normal audio podcast. But on YouTube, rather than just being a screen of the artwork, you're going to get video of James and I talking. Yeah. So that's the biggest advantage to pre-recording everything and having it set in stone. Because if we're live, we can't do video. No, we can only do this if we pre-record. So since everything's pre-recorded now, there's no live podcast anymore, which were fun. But I'm sure we're going to be doing live stuff. And we talked about this, like, James, you said, what if something happens big and we need to do, like, a live podcast thing? I'm like, well, we can, but that's not, like, an official As Always podcast episode. It'll just be As Always podcast special, new console, Xbox Series X reveal, PS5. Assassin's Creed, Ragnarok
new AC
reveal.
League. Desmond's son was revealed?
Yeah. So we can just do it that way. We can just do it that way, where it'll just be audio because it's just live and quick and it's just you and I talking. But in terms of an official episode of the As Always podcast, they're going to be video podcasts on YouTube from now on. So that's, I think, really exciting because we kind of got stagnant in terms of YouTube views. Like, our audio views are going up, but our YouTube views aren't. So obviously, people are only there out of habit. People aren't there out of wanting new viewers. So, you need to add that video element. That's what YouTube's for. It's for video, so we got to give it video.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it'll make people that already listen to the podcast maybe go to YouTube a bit more, which is good for growth of the podcast in general. Plus, the new structure, the way that we're changing up thumbnails, the way that we display the podcast and market the podcast, I think 2020 is going to be a big year for growing the As Always podcast, rather than it just being something, because I think for the past few years, it's been a thing that we've done for the people that love it, and maybe we get new people here and there, but we've never really gone out of our way to promote and make sure the podcast is seen by people and that we're really marketing it well. So I think this year is going to be a bigger year for that, like having, clickable thumbnails, making sure we've got this purpose and structure to the podcast, having big guests. I think this is the year we really want to focus on growing As Always podcast into something bigger. So I'm really excited to do all that and start the new structure and really get into it and see where we can go with the podcast and really grow it. So I think it's going to be good stuff this year.
Yeah, 100%. And on that, like, if I was to post clips, which my aim is and goal is, and I will post at least one clip from every podcast, is like a honey dick. I've always done that. They sometimes get really good views if they're on a specific topic that's short form that people want to see a highlight of. And if it's just an audio file, I tend to have to add clips to it to make it interesting, or else people click off like it's a podcast clip of nothing. Like, fuck that. But at least if you've got someone to look at, people tend to stay and watch it more. So that's also going to help with the marketing of it when we post clips of it, not just like you said, the thumbnails are going to be more cinema room-esque, and having the video podcast is better. And so, sure, guests probably won't be able to have their video, but I'm sure there will be guests that will be able to do this. Like, I'd imagine if we did a 4 Pillars podcast, we could have all 4 of us on camera and stuff like that. But it might, and it's not going to happen with every guest. But at the very least, you're going to have James and I, our faces on the YouTube video format. So that's really exciting. That's what I'm probably most excited about, because I think that's going to be the most successful edition of the year, personally.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I think that's it. I think those are the main things we covered. We've covered the artwork. We've covered the new merch store. We've covered each show's individually and the changes, the new time for the podcast, as well as video podcast. So yeah, that's it.
Yep, seems about right.
That's everything we wanted to cover with As Always 2020. Our goal is 300 patrons by the end of the year. Sorry to steal your thunder there.
Yeah, you did. You did really, and I am disappointed, but I'll hide it until after the podcast.
Okay, that's right. And then you can cry about it to me after. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But I won't tell them that.
All good. No. That'll be weird. But yeah, so that's it. I'm really excited. We're just going to have to look presentable every time we do a podcast. That's the only thing. But
you don't know how much of a ball ache that's going to be. But it's worth it for the views, so I'm fine with it.
All you've really got to do is chuck on a bit of As Always merch.
Oh, God.
And whatever. Your hair's a mess anyway.
I used to just roll out of bed and just get into my chair and I'd be like, I look dreadful. And I would never go out of my house like this in a million years. But no one's going to see me, so it's okay. But now I'm like, I've got to get up like at least like 30 minutes before the podcast instead of 5. So, I guess I can do it.
I guess you're going to have to do it. Or just put on a hat or a beanie like you used to do.
No, I don't wear beanies anymore. I don't think I own a beanie
I took it away from you. I took your soul in that multiplayer battle and
you did. I never wore a beanie again after that.
Yeah.
It might be true, actually. That. I don't even know.
Yeah, you know what? That'd be amazing. That'd be amazing.
It might actually be accidentally true,
yeah. Yeah, but no, amazing. I'm so ecstatic for 2020. I got a new level of energy just for doing YouTube and videos on my channel, and I've always had energy for As Always, but with that newfound energy for the channel, I can put even more into As Always than I have before, and I know you're just as excited for what we got in store. So stay tuned, be ready, because in a week's time you're going to get the first As Always podcast of the year, as well as just the first As Always podcast of the year. And then I was about to say, is there anything else? No. Oh yeah, and Cinema Room for Patreon. Room for Patreon, the Oscar special. So you're gonna get 2 podcasts next week if you're a patron. Patreon.com/As Always for just $1 a month. You get exclusive access to the Cinema Room podcast. Oh no, the Clubhouse podcast, and a week's early access to the Cinema Room podcast. Hey man, I'm all set. There's a couple of catchphrases for you. Yeah, it's how it be sometimes,
that is how it be sometimes.
I'm just throwing in catchphrases, man. Make t-shirts. Go to teespring.com/As Always Entertainment. But anyway.
Relax, man. Hey, man. For sure.
Relax. That's a throwback. That's a throwback. I forgot about that one. I totally forgot about it. It's crazy. Big shoes became such a thing we forgot about For Sure Relax.
Hey, man, For Sure Big Shoes.
Dude,
to be
For
honest,
Sure Relax.
That's a throwback to when we had another co-host.
Hey, man. For Sure Relax. Wames Gelford. Anyway, we're going into a deep, dark place right now. We need to get out. We need to end this right now.
Jesus Christ.
Wrap this up, please.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, everybody, so much for joining us for this relaunch episode. We're not doing the list, are we? Because we didn't.
No.
So no,
It's
we're
not a
doing the
podcast.
list.
It's not a
No,
podcast.
well, it is basically
It's a video.
podcast, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
But
true.
Are we putting this on podcast services? I assume so, because sometimes that's the only place people listen.
All right, I guess we are then.
Yeah.
I don't know,
someone
man.
only listened on iTunes and they didn't know this existed, they'd be so disappointed. Well, they wouldn't because they didn't know it existed. But I mean,
right. Yeah.
I'd be disappointed. Anyway, thanks everybody so much for listening. We will see you in a week's time for the first episode of As Always podcast of 2020, as well as the relaunch of bloody Cinema Room over on Patreon, and then the following week will be Clubhouse on Patreon, as well as that previous Cinema Room on YouTube, so and podcast services. So everything will return as normal starting next Monday, so a week from when this goes up at 3:30 p.m. UK time. So convert that to your time zone, whatever it might be, and that's when you'll be seeing podcasts from now on. But that's it from us, and we'll see you next time. The links are in the description to the merch store, both of our channels, social media, all of that stuff. So there's all that, and I think that's it. We'll see you in a week's time. All good. Sweet and sick.
Goodbye.
And gaming.
Sweet and sick.
See you later, boys.
Sick and gaming.
Catch you later. Goodbye.
Bye.